Calcium is one of the most important nutrients for plant quality and resilience. However, it is also one of the most difficult nutrients to move throughout the plant. That is why, even in fields with high soil calcium levels, we still see problems such as blossom end rot, tip burn, bitter pit, fruit cracking, internal tissue collapse, and poor post-harvest performance. So why does this happen? And more importantly, how can we ensure that calcium actually reaches the parts of the plant where it is needed most? Today, we're going to explain how Ecoculture's CalFlux technology works. Calcium can account for up to 5% of a plant's dry weight, but its importance goes far beyond quantity. Calcium is a structural component of the cell wall, a membrane stabilizer, a regulator of cellular stress, and a key physiological messenger. When calcium is deficient, cell walls lose strength, membranes become unstable, and the plant becomes far more vulnerable. This results in soft fruit, collapsed tissues, poor shelf life, increased disease susceptibility, and reduced market quality. This is where the real challenge with calcium begins. Calcium moves primarily with water through the xylem. This means it is transported most efficiently to highly transpiring tissues, such as mature leaves, growing points, and tissues with high evaporation rates. However, some organs transpire very little, including fruits, inner leaves, and young developing tissues. And these are precisely the tissues where most calcium-related disorders occur. During periods of stress, including heat, high humidity, salinity, excessive nitrate levels, or water stress, calcium uptake and distribution become even less efficient. Some technologies combine boron with calcium. Boron helps mobilize calcium within the plant, but it still directs most of that calcium toward highly transpiring tissues. CalFlux technology works in a completely different way from conventional calcium fertilizers. CalFlux is a liquid foliar fertilizer containing 5% calcium combined with 3% zinc, but the real innovation lies in its formulation. CalFlux is absorbed directly into the cell wall, entering the apoplast precisely at the point of contact. This is extremely important. Traditional calcium fertilizers depend on root uptake, xylem transport, and transpiration. CalFlux does not. Its calcium is delivered directly into the tissue where it is applied, and that completely changes its efficiency. Once inside the apoplast, the calcium supplied by CalFlux becomes part of the cell wall. It acts by cross-linking the pectins within the middle lamella. In other words, it functions as a biological cement, binding and strengthening adjacent plant cells. It also stabilizes cell membranes, improves tissue integrity, increases firmness, and extends shelf life. The result? Plants become significantly more resistant to stress, pathogens, dehydration, and cellular collapse. Under stress conditions, many diseases and physiological disorders begin with degradation of the cell wall. Pathogens release enzymes that break down pectins. This generates fragments known as oligogalacturonides. These fragments trigger the plant's hypersensitive response, leading to an oxidative burst, excessive production of reactive oxygen species, ROS, and cellular damage. CalFlux helps prevent this process by strengthening the cell wall before damage occurs. Pathogen enzymes have far greater difficulty degrading reinforced pectins. As tissue damage is reduced, oxidative stress decreases, cellular organelles remain protected, and the plant is able to maintain a healthier metabolism. Trials carried out in tomato and pepper demonstrated outstanding performance against blossom end rot. Even when applying 90% less calcium than a conventional calcium fertilizer, CalFlux achieved up to 50% higher calcium concentrations in the distal part of the fruit. This demonstrates a fundamental principle. It is not simply about how much calcium you apply, it is about how much calcium actually reaches the tissue. In Honeycrisp apples, CalFlux increased fruit calcium levels, improved fruit weight, and completely eliminated bitter pit in the treated area. It also improved color, texture, and overall eating quality. In bananas, where calcium distribution is particularly challenging, CalFlux increased calcium levels in the distal part of the fruit by up to 45%. In oilseed rape and peas, calcium also plays a fundamental role in flowering, pollen tube development, fruit set, and seed filling. In oilseed rape, CalFlux delivered increased flowering, more pods, 10% higher oil content, and contributed to a world record yield. In peas, it improved distal seed filling and contributed to another world record yield. One of the most interesting effects of CalFlux is its influence on anthocyanin production. Anthocyanins improve color, flavor, visual quality, and UV protection. When plants experience excessive stress, ROS levels increase and pigment synthesis becomes disrupted. CalFlux reduces this stress and improves cellular stability. Trials showed a 93% increase in anthocyanin content in cherries and a 15% increase in peaches, resulting in clear improvements in color, texture, and flavor. By strengthening cell walls, CalFlux also makes it more difficult for fungi and bacteria to establish infection. This was demonstrated in trials involving downy mildew in melon, botrytis in tomato, and cladosporium in banana. CalFlux demonstrated significant levels of protection across a range of crops. It does not function as a direct fungicide. Instead, it works by physically strengthening the plant. And a stronger plant is always a more resilient plant. All of this ultimately translates into higher yields, better quality, longer shelf life, greater profitability. Field trials have demonstrated yield increases of 16% in strawberries, 28% in sunflower, and 10% in oilseed rape. These results complement several Guinness World Records and World Record crop yields achieved using CalFlux in combination with other technologies from the Ecoculture program. CalFlux is not simply another calcium fertilizer. It is a technology designed to deliver calcium exactly where the plant needs it most. More resilience, higher quality, less stress, greater performance. Because when you strengthen the cell, you strengthen the entire plant.